what did you make of the speech itself? Was it all you wanted to hear? Was there something missing? Was there something that didn't need to be said?
Okay, I thought he set the right tone for politics, because he did mention that we come from a Westminster. We're following the Westminster majority takes all model. So I was very pleased. I was actually laughing when he said that it wasn't a majority of arrogance or pettiness or complacency, because you do realize that having a negligible majority of one, it doesn't give the Prime Minister a lot of comfort. And so he really did set the right tone of talking about partnership and consensus. But I wanted to mention something that the opposition and other interest groups, they can't insist on their point of view and inciting the masses against the policies just for the sake of it, because it's not that because this person says we're going to have consensus that it means that there won't be any contestation. You will expect the opposition to be quite vigorous in their contestation of some of the policies of the government, because you know both parties are the same in terms of what they want to achieve for the Jamaican people, but they do have different approaches to it. And so I expect open, vigorous contestations, because it's only after that that I believe that you will have the kind of consensus that will bring our country forward. I also want to mention that civil society and that kind of engagement is going to be very important. So I'm hoping that the Prime Minister will include civil society, community groups, the entertainers, the athletes, the media, the business community, particularly the media, because access to information, he did mention that, and in order to build the trust that he talked about, we have in the media to have that kind of access to information. And I'm afraid the Labour Party has been, in the past, very hard on the media and very critical of the media's role. And we'd like to see a free press, access to information, so that we can keep the government to account in the way that he expects to be held accountable. So I thought it was a good speech. I wanted him to say more on human rights. A lot of our children and women have been killed in the last few years. He did say the rule of law as part of, the good governance that he expects to see. But I was hoping that he would touch a little bit deep on human rights and fundamental rights, and also about gender equity and about the role of women and protecting our children.
All right. We have commended him for keeping it down to 29 minutes. So as Patrick has suggested, maybe he couldn't get everything there, and that Dr. Hume Johnson, because I wonder if that struck you throughout the campaign, and maybe a lack of emphasis on that in the swearing-in speech today. I know education is close to your heart, and we all know, as well as production and growth, if we don't have the corresponding increase in our education of youngsters, then nothing is going to change. Did you find it a little strange that hasn't been a big part of the debate, the discussion, the campaigning, and the speech?
Simon, so apparently we had a debate, and a lot of these issues that we're talking about, I think, would have been aired at that time. But one of the challenges that I've had personally with the campaign itself was, and I think one of the guests already mentioned this, that it was quite reactive, because Andrew Holness didn't have a choice but to be reactive, and the campaign seemed to have centered around the economics argument, and because he had proposed this tax plan, then a lot of the argument became part of the House issue is affluence and the prosperity issue. And when you look at prosperity, you will notice that it has affluence. There's a synonym for it. You want to live milk and honey, the good life. And I thought that the JLP should have expanded, and I know they're quite aware that prosperity is much more than that, because we're thinking about well-being, lowering the crime rate, people's sense of security is part of their prosperity. Education, and he did mention continuing with free tuition and no user fees for healthcare. So those things, improving the health sector. We had a terrible report from the Southeast Regional Health Authority late last year. And so these are some of the things that will create a prosperous society as well. And preparation for public health disasters, such as the outbreak of Zika virus or H1N1, the breakout of diseases that we have casualties, which are babies, 20 or 19 babies last year. And so to improve the health facilities, to improve education for young people, to ensure that they have jobs, to ensure that we lower the crime rate so that people can actually feel good and live in a society without looking over their backs. My nephew was walking home from Calabar last year, and he's 14 years old, and he was stabbed and just for a bag. So we expect prosperity, money in our pockets, but we also expect to live in a safe environment, to be educated, to have health care, to ensure that our society is managed in a way which make us feel prosperous and make investors want to invest in the country. So I would expect that the notion of Jamaica's good name and ensuring that governance indicators are up, to ensure that people have a good perception of the country, not only economically, but in terms of whether the society is safe for them to visit, is also part of prosperity. And I think going forward, the JLP may want to expand that notion, so that is much more than money and about the whole development of the society.
It's a good point, because I thought the 10-point plan before the manifestos were released was a very smart move on their part, with that central plank of the 1.5. But in it, there's addressing the issue of healthcare without detail, but knowing that that was a significant point for Jamaicans because of chikungunya, the threat of Zika, and people were even afraid that Ebola would be here shortly. And of course now we have H1N1. I'm also hearing from the Ministry of Health last night that we have about 26 cases of dengue. So it's a lot for the system to deal with, but they touched on improving that. Seems to me that's got to be. What else would you want to see, given it what they had promised? What else do you want to see being addressed very quickly in the life?
First of all, Simon, I really think that there's so much to fix in Jamaica that we really have to manage our own expectations as citizens as well. Because I think that there are people who are of the view that there's going to be this great, massive transformation overnight or within 100 days. But change is something that takes time. A lot of these things are structural and institutional, and they will have to take some time, and we're going to have to be a little bit patient. So I'm hoping that we also engage with the system. And I think also that government tries to do a whole bunch of things at once, and a lot of people go into the ministries and they are working at, cruise control, the day-to-day activities. Nothing new is being put on the table. I think it would be nice to see members of parliament pick up 2 or 3 big items from the constituency level, rather than try to do a whole bunch of things.
But sorry to cut you, Hume, but if some of those problems are or have been seen as not being done because, not necessarily because of a lack of resources, but of incompetence, of not paying enough attention to detail, of not committing to doing something.
We're not really doers.
No, right. So for instance, the issue of water, because what the JLP's 10-point plan did was address concerns that have been out on social media, that people talk about on verandas. So you're coming out of a drought, everybody is saying, how can we be in the land of wood and water and we keep having droughts? And they say, but we have water. They're addressing the water issue. They're saying we are going to fix the water thing. They don't give you any detail. So I want to see the thought process change that results in the Minister of Water and the rest of it saying, you know what, we have not done anything to our water supply over the last 100 years. I am going to be the minister that leaves a legacy of a change in how we distribute. That's the kind of thing. Then it's going to take time, but I want to see that from the new government.
I appreciate that, Simon, and we're on the same page. I am just saying all of the issues won't be fixed at once.
Absolutely.
I think that there are big items that are urgent, and you mentioned the water issue, which is a 30-year drought or water management issue that we have had. And the PNP has not managed to fix those issues over time. So if I've had the good fortune of sitting down with Andrew Holness after the 2011 elections and a one-on-one, and he listens, and I really appreciate the fact that he had matured to a point where he does more of the listening, and a lot of the JLP's agenda was based on what the people were saying. I am confident that the Labour Party will see it as urgent to address the concerns of the broad base of the people, and water is one of the big issues. Crime is another big issue, but it's one of those issues that is so complex and requires so much reform of the court system, how things operate. Certain legislation need to be pushed in terms of gang legislation, bail legislation, and so some of the things will require some patience on the part of the population.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you mentioned voluntarism, because we need to be engaged in our communities as well, helping to fix some of the issues that we can fix on our own, rather than waiting on the government to come around and fix a pothole.
All right, Hume, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to Dr. Hume Johnson there for joining us on Skype. We've got maybe about a minute or so.